You are free. But what does it mean to be free? You are free as a slave of Jesus Christ. That means, although you are free, what makes you enjoy your life is to subject it voluntarily on your own to serve the Lord all the days of your life. I think that's the message of Galatians chapter 5, verse 13. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. Can you see what this freedom is all about? It is true you are called to be free. You are no longer a slave. You know, for example, if somebody is an alcoholic, he's a slave to alcohol. He doesn't drink because he wants to. He drinks because he must. So he is a slave to the alcohol. So when you become free and you still do things that are wrong, it just means you still are a slave, because you keep regretting, I wish I knew. I should not have done this, or I should not have done the other. That is not freedom. If you are free to do things, you do things that make you enhance your joy. You do not live a life of regret, because a life of regret is an example of somebody with doing things because they must, not because they enjoy doing them. In other words, when you make a choice of Christ, you make a choice to allow him to lead you, to guide you. So, in your freedom, you do not allow the flesh to become your master. You know, that's why we fast. What is fasting? Fasting does not help God in any way. But when you fast, you are trying to remind your body it is not in control. Eating is a necessity, I agree. But you can tell your body, wait a minute, I can stay without eating for the next 7 days. I am the one in command, in control, not the stomach. That's the freedom I have. The freedom to command my flesh, not to do the things my flesh is insisting on me doing. You know, sex may be good, but if you feel you must have sex, even when you are not married, you are a slave to sex. If you feel you must have sex, although your spouse is miles away from where you are, it means you're a slave to sex. Freedom is the ability to do what you want, when you want to do it, the way you want to do it, without something else controlling you and making you do things you would otherwise not choose. That's the meaning of indulging the flesh, allowing the flesh to control you. Instead, Paul suggests, serve one another humbly in love. In other words, you have made a choice to be Christ's instrument for the good of the brethren. So therefore, you make a choice to serve other Christians, to ask yourself, how can I help them? Financially, socially, spiritually, and it's not by force. It's a choice you have actually made. So you choose to serve one another. And in doing so, since your motivation is not a force or a addiction, you do so humbly in love. In other words, you have a desire for the good of these brethren. So you are doing your best and you are not trying to throw your weight around. You know, the reason why this freedom is redefined is because the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, by choosing to be a Christian, you have chosen to live by this golden rule, what people have come to call the golden rule. The golden rule is love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's what Jesus taught us. But unfortunately, if you don't have this freedom that is given by being a Christian, you always love people for a reason. You always look for something that will make you do something. You keep asking, what is in it for me? But the golden rule says no. You do things for others the way you would want them to do to you. Not because they have done it to you, but if you not want somebody to do something to you, why would you want to do it unto others? You have the freedom to choose to do good. And the Bible is telling us when you live that law, by that law, the golden law, you cannot end up in any sin because you will not do anything that will dishonor God. Instead, you will be serving others. In fact, verse 15 of Galatians 5 is saying, if you bite and devour each other, it just means you have no freedom. Because if you bite me and devour me, I'll be looking to do the same to you. You end up in chaos yourself. And you're the one who started it. By loving yourself, behold how you love others. In fact, the Bible, Paul is telling them, watch out. Be very careful, or you'll be destroyed by each other. People who don't operate under this freedom that's given by Christ cannot be good neighbors for one another. And therefore they end up doing things that boomerang back to them and hurt them, and yet they did not have the freedom to make the right choices that would have enhanced the neighborhood and made them enjoy their life together with others. That's not something that they will spend time on. So living by the Spirit or living by Christ's direction is a life of freedom, where you do not allow anything other than Christ to control your life. Verse 16 says, so I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of your flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Where are we learning? Galatians are being told, if you choose to go by the law, you'll be under it. You'll be forced to do things. But when you come to Christ, He gives you the desire to do good, the desire to please Jesus, and you enjoy pleasing the Lord. So you are no longer operating under the law. There is a law of freedom that has come to you. That's why the Bible is telling you, if you really want to live the life of freedom, then you must surrender yourself totally to the Spirit of God. He is calling it in verse 16, walk by the Spirit. What does it walk by the Spirit? It means the Spirit is the one guiding you, number one. So you are seeking the Spirit of God to guide you. Number two, you are unwilling to displease the Spirit of God or do something or say something or think something that will displease the Spirit of God or grieve the Spirit of God if you are walking by the Spirit. And number three, not only is He the one guiding you, not only are you not willing to displease Him, but thirdly, you enjoy doing what the Spirit tells you to do. That's the way you say, I'm walking by the Spirit. And if that's the way you are walking, the Bible is confirming to you, you will not gratify the desires of your flesh. Because whatever the flesh wants, oh, you feel hungry, oh, you need sex, oh, you need... No. You need to be rich. It can't control you. What is called the 3 G's that bring the men of God down. Gold, girls, and either of them has a problem, or glory. That one is glory is the pride, you know. You want to have a good name. You want to be have power. Not when the Spirit of the one is the one guiding you. Goal is, I want to be wealthy. I'll be somebody if I have the money. If you no, I feel okay with or without money. It doesn't mean you'll not get money, but it means it's not driving you. And girls or guys, sex will not be a problem because you have subjected everything to the Spirit of God. So you don't do what the Spirit is telling you to do. You do what is right to do. And that will be something very important. So for the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit. So the moment you now walk by the Spirit, rest assured, the Spirit will lead you away from many things that the flesh desires. The flesh may be desiring a bit of wine, a bit of alcohol, a bit of this. The Spirit of God is saying, do not be drunk with wine. Do not be drunk. So it will push you away from the things the flesh is saying one thing, the Spirit of God is leading you a different thing. That's how you will not fulfill the desires of your flesh. The flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. And that's what you need to do. The moment you allow Christ control you, He will not lead you the same way your flesh or natural desires of your body will take you. He will lead you to another way. But the difference is that you enjoy following the Spirit of God, going in the direction. And there are no negative repercussions out of walking with the Spirit of God. You know, these two, the flesh and the Spirit, are in conflict with each other. So that they are not, according to verse 17, they are not, or you are not to do whatever you want. So that's what it means. The Paul is explaining to you exactly what does it mean to walk by the Spirit. You do not do whatever you want. You do what the Spirit wants. Then we can then say you are walking by the Spirit. And when you walk in the Spirit, you have a new freedom. You enjoy walking with Him. Verse 18 is saying, but if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. If you really are being led by the Spirit, therefore, you have come out of the law. You now just listen to the Spirit of God and obey Him. Number one. Number two, He gives you the power to obey Him. Not only is He going to guide you, He will give you the ability to say no to sin and to accurately follow Him and obey Him in every way. Looking at your own life, do you see this struggle, this contrariness, that sometimes the flesh is telling you to go one way, and sometimes the Spirit is telling you another way? Unfortunately for you, the Spirit will not force you. I remember a young man crying out, oh God, I'm having such challenges on the issues of sex. Why don't you castrate me? God will not castrate you. It's a choice you have to make. And the moment you subject yourself to the Spirit of God, then you'll discover these strong desires will be managed by the Spirit of God. You no longer will be pushed into sexual addiction when you allow yourself to be controlled by the Spirit of God. What are the other things that are leading you to have this struggle? The struggle we are talking about, the struggle to not to obey the Spirit of God, the struggle to do things that you later regret about. It's all the question of, have you subjected yourself to the Lord? Are you born again? What does it mean, born again? You have admitted your weakness, your sinfulness, and your helplessness. Number one. Number two, you have repented of all the things you have done or thought or said that don't please the Lord. Number three, you have committed yourself to be the slave of the Spirit of God so that He now controls you. And you ask Him, come into my life and now control me. And you discover once it's in your life, he will give you fresh new desires that are contrary to the desires of the flesh. And I think that's something that you need to look at. Just look at verse 19, 20, and 21. The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissension, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. Do you hear? It's a long list, long list of things that the Spirit of God will lead you away from, because they are the deeds of the flesh, and they can be quite something. You know, Paul is teaching something really important for us in the walk with God, and that is fight against the flesh. Please notice that Paul is not talking about walk by the Spirit and not by the flesh. Rather, when you walk by the Spirit, there's a result that will occur. You will not gratify the desires of your flesh. In other words, it does not mean once you're a Christian the desires are dead, but it somehow gives you victory over them. And I think that is something that's important. I think that's the message the Bible is also giving way back in Ezekiel 36, 25, 27. It says, I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from all your uncleanness and from all your idols. I will cleanse you, and I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I'll put within you. And I'll remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. And I'll put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. That's what every Christian looks for, asks for. A new spirit. Removal of the heart of stone that makes you reject God's ways and go the wrong way. I think we really must be grateful for this offer the Lord is giving us. Something mystical is happening when you surrender your life to the Lord. The Spirit gives you this new power to say no to sin. Things that earlier were controlling you, He gives you power to walk away from them. And therefore to live in a way that honors God. So that's why the word of God is clear. If you want to be a Christian, then walk by the Spirit. You know, we cannot be exchanging one set of commands to another. We have subjected ourselves to Christ. He now controls us. You know, he has already told you, Paul, that there's no need of trying it. It's a no-win battle to go on your own. You need this new heart so that he can control you and guide you. I think that will be very, very important. You know, this list that we are talking about is a list that tells you whenever you are doing that, you are no longer walking by the Spirit. That's why he's saying the work of the flesh are evident. You'll be able to tell you are actually walking the flesh. And you can not argue that you are walking by the Spirit when clearly the things you are doing are very different. Have you noticed that the first three sins on the list have all to do with the sins of sex? Do you notice that? He is saying the act of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery. And with sex is one of the things that destroys the people of God when they want to think they can fight it on their own. Because we need God's help for sure. The problem of sexual sin is quite something, because it destroys marriages. But even the single people are totally destroyed. Your girlfriend had better just doubt your sexual purity, and she'll be up and running away from you. You know, it will be important to understand why people who are living in low sex, whether we are talking about homosexuality, or we are talking about pornography, or whatever we are talking about, casual sex, all those people are people controlled by the flesh. They are slaves of the flesh. That's what Paul is teaching us. You know, the world, whether it's in Africa or elsewhere, sex seems to drive issues. And what we are calling sexual freedom today is a succumbing to this control of the flesh. The Greek word we are talking that's being used here is, you can talk about sexual immorality to include adultery. It can also be fornication. But you know, there are others that are called bestiality, you know, where you have sex with animals, or even prostitution. It's all the same immorality. And even incest. It's an all-encompassing word when you talk about sexual immorality. And he's saying it's a mark that you are being controlled by the flesh. But you know, it's the same thing when you talk about impurity and sensuality. Because impurity is referring to any sexual activity not authorized by God, and sensuality is the idea of sexual indulgence. If you are not married, sex is wrong. However, you might wonder where the line is regarding any kind of sexual involvement. It's very clear. One man, one woman, after they have been joined by the Spirit of God. Not the fact that you have paid dowry, no, but that you have gone before God to make your vows, and a man of God has prayed over you. Then we can say what God has joined, not what the elders have joined. What God has joined, let no man put asunder. If you have sex just because you have paid dowry, you are entering into a dangerous ground. Because sex, immorality is any sex before God has joined you together. And it will be very important that you talk about this. So debauchery or sensuality is something that will not be mentioned among the people of God. So sure, the works of the flesh are obvious. Whether you talk about idolatry, it's also worship of anything apart from the one true God. And today, of course, that's a mark of that you are being led of by the devil. Idolatry is having something that you fear beyond God, or that you love beyond God. Maybe wealth, And maybe even your job, you feel like you are willing to do anything your boss tells you, even if it displeases the Lord. Maybe a hobby. You can, by the way, you can also worship comfort. So that in order not to lose comfort, you are willing to do anything, even if it does not please the Lord. Anything you give priority over God is your new God. And it is idolatry. That's what is being told is it's a clear mark that you are following the work of the flesh. What about sorcery? It's also being listed as a sign of the flesh. Sorcery was used by the ancients to supposedly come in contact with the deities. Thus, the word has a close association to black magic, witchcraft, sorcery, even ancestral worship is all part of it. So when you see somebody who is paying the debt of the ancestors in order to appease the ancestors, something Jomo Kenyatta talks about in his book, Facing Mount Kenya, that's not really worship, it is appeasing the ancestors. The Bible does not allow you to deal with dead spirits. So when you enter there, that's part of the sorcery. And it's something that you need to ask yourself, why would you go that direction? So anything that has to do with ancestral worship, doing things so that the spirits of the dead are appeased, you have entered. It's a sign of the flesh. They are works of the flesh. And the same thing with the drug addiction. So anything that changes your mind. Because the word of God commands, be sober. How can you be sober when you are taking substances that make you not know yourself? Now, I think that's something you need to talk about. But on the list also is the issues of enmity, strife, and jealousies. All these have to do with how you relate. Jesus, we are told as a baby, grew in favor with man. In other words, he knew how to relate with the people. So it's a sign of the flesh when you are just a difficult person. You are always, and you enjoy it, just fighting others and being difficult to them. You enjoy it. It's a sign that you are being led by the flesh. And it may include even envy. Because what is envy? Not desiring what others, not being happy with what people have. It's a desire to possess what God has chosen to give to others and not to give you. Paul wants to make sure that we do not read his list in such a way that we think we can have a loophole before God. That's why it's so comprehensive. Do you then understand why he's saying in verse 21, and things like this? In other words, this list, as long as it is not comprehensive. There are more things. Understand that anything like this is condemned, even if it's not on the list. And he's saying, those are the things you do, you certainly will not inherit the kingdom of God. You are led of the flesh. Doing these things, you cannot just dismiss it or excuse it. It will be important to understand you are going the wrong way for sure. So let me read it again. Sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery, a set of 3. Verse 20, idolatry and witchcraft. This is the alcohol and whatever. Then issues of social, that is hatred, discord, and jealousy. Fates of rage. Things that make you difficult to work with. And they cannot include selfish ambition, dissensions, and factions. All those are things that will make you in the church, destroy the church. It's the work of the flesh. And I've talked about envy. What about drunkenness, orgies, and the like? All these things are a sign you are being led by the flesh and you are not walking by the Spirit. May we learn that walking in the Spirit is a life of freedom.